Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast.
So, couple questions. Couple guys came to me after this morning's group shooting accuracy work, and they're like, I gotta get better. Yeah, this is not, you don't show up to school and then the same day leave with a diploma that says you're now a doctor, go do surgery, right? That said, this is not rocket science or medicine. I told a story yesterday. A dude, we're taking on salespeople. Somebody just asked me about the gun oil. We own a gun oil business. We're taking on some new salesmen. A guy called me for a post that was up, and he's super intelligent. He started by saying, I'm a Grandmaster shooter. USPSA Grandmaster puts him in the top 0.01% of shooters with a pistol in the world. That's like the closest thing to a Jedi with a gun that like a human can imagine. There's a few guys that are like special operations that shoot that well, but if you wanted to learn how to shoot, you don't go to a Green Beret or a Navy SEAL. You go see a USPSA GM. That's like, right? That's Joe Satriani on the guitar or Julia Child in the kitchen. Dig? So we're talking, and so this guy knows all about guns and shooting. And I'm like, he's saying things. I'm like, do I know you? He's like, yeah, I trained with you a couple years ago in California. I'm like, what's your name again? And as you see, I try to remember your names. Matt, Tim, Danny, that guy. I know your name, Bert. Bert with an E, not a U. Yeah. I think I was with you. I know your name. So he's like, yeah, you're at class. And I remembered, this dude couldn't shoot for shit. Like 3 or 4 years ago, I met him in California. I mean, he was just like, I just got a gun. How do I hold it? I didn't teach him to be a GM, but he literally told me like the stuff that we did, he pounded it out, and then he far surpassed anything I knew and did what every guy I know at that level has done, which is hyper-specific focus into whatever it is that you're looking to do. Kind of where we started this morning. What's the goal? How do I get there? That PDF we sent you, what's the goal? What things can I visualize right now that I need to achieve that goal? What can I touch? What don't I understand? Who do I need to talk to help me understand it, right? We talked about that. You read about it. My point in bringing him up, just a couple years, he went from barely shoot to can go compete at a national or world stage level. That's how that works. And you can't do that. You don't like go from not flying a plane to flying a fighter jet in a couple years, right? You don't go from I like cutting people to now I'm doing brain surgery in a couple years. That takes a lifetime. This is not hard. You're pointing a tube at something and flipping a switch. That's all it is. But then there's some things to make it refined and repeatable, that robust and repeatable thing I keep talking about. But it's really not that hard. So I think when we start to disconnect the desire to like get it, like I want to get it, and just more work on the process, right? Have you guys ever heard that process driven versus outcome, right? I think we can get too big picture, like I want to be rich. There's a lot of people that want to be rich, but what are you going to do to be rich? Or I want to be fit. A lot of people want to look like the front of a Men's Health magazine, but a lot of people are not willing to eat nice things and then work out for 10, 12 hours a week. So want in one hand and shit in the other, as they say. But when we can start to define it and then compartmentalize it, we get somewhere. This kind of stuff is nauseating. I used to do this for like an hour at a time. I've ruptured blood vessels in my hand to where like marble-sized clots of blood formed in my hand from gripping my own hand so hard that I ruptured blood vessels. That's not healthy, nor is it like a good idea. So like I had to start changing that. I gave myself tendinitis and bursitis from just, I mean, we're not meant to do this. What do you do in your life where you're like, that's what we're doing, you know, we're just grip. So we need to approach this stuff, and if you guys want more of these, I'm just gonna leave them here. We approach this stuff in this sense of, okay, I'm gonna figure out how to do this, and then I'll come back to this from time to time. One of my mentors, Bob Housingay, I talk about him in every class, 6-time national shooting champ, hyper accurate. Who's heard of Mas Ayub? Just one of you? A couple of you? Raise your hand if you've heard of Mas. If you've not, shame on you, go read his book. In your handout, I talk about it in the gravest extreme. Guys like Andrew Branca, who wrote the book, The Law of Self-Defense, really just kind of rewrote Mas's stuff. And Andrew's an excellent guy, he's a friend, but that's, my point is in the 70s, this guy was like talking about things that now are commonplace knowledge. Anyway, Mas was one of the first guys to do what we're doing. He had LFI, the Lethal Force Institute. Him, Gunsight, Clint Smith, who worked for Gunsight, so really Gunsight came before, but it was really at one point Gunsight and LFI. And guys like Mas, he's a good shooter. He was the first person to be a master in all of the IDPA disciplines. He was one of the founding members of IDPA, which if you don't know what that is, there's kind of two competitive shooting practices here in the U.S. 3. What's that?
Did you say Mas Ayub founded that?
He was one of them. I mean, there's a bunch of dudes. My friend Cameron Hopkins from Supervel, who's on the tent. Cameron was one of the guys. Wilson Combat, Bill Wilson, Ken Hackathorn. All those guys, they created that, and everything becomes a game, right? IPSC, International Practical Shooting, started to get gamey. That came out of the leather slapping leather, that like the old 1950s leather slap, that guys like, you guys ever heard of a Chapman or a Weaver style shooting stance? Chapman, Weaver, and Cooper, these guys, Colonel Cooper from Gunsight, they would have these shoot-offs up in the mountains in Northern California, and out of that came the International Practical Shooting. That became too gamey for them, and they're like, let's create this other thing, and ultimately that's where IDPA came from. I'm not selling you any of this shit, but what happens is, and now it's happening again, where these things guys want to win. They lose sight of the purpose. The purpose was to create challenges in shooting that forced an evolution of skill building, forced an evolution of growth, and ideas and gear. None of you are carrying like an outside the waistband leather holster with a 6-shooter, because we figured out that a semi-automatic, probably a double stack magazine, something that's highly reliable. Give me a stock Glock over most any of the gun on the line if I gotta just leave and go off into the world. Why? Because I'll find a holster, I'll find sights, I'll find magazines, I'll find replacement springs, and the going to work. And if I have to, with nothing but a pocket knife, I can take the whole gun down into all of its components besides pulling like the sights off of it. I can literally, you can strip a whole Glock down, and this isn't a Glock sales pitch. What I'm saying is, because I've got these fancy Berettas that you got to do all kinds of goofy shit to, but they're fun to shoot and I like them. It starts to beg the question like of what our goals are. Back to Bob Housingay, I didn't lose track of what I was talking about. Bob created much of the shooting program that made Mas famous. Even though Mas was this guy that wrote all these books and stuff and was a famous shooting instructor, still to this day, he's on all the shooting shows, he's on every podcast under the sun. Bob, who was a police chief over in Comanche, Iowa. You guys know who Jerry Michalik is? Bob used to be like on par with Jerry back in the day, and he became a police chief and did that. This guy's good. He took my single shot, my J-frame revolver, little 38 J-frame, and was shooting it upside down with his pinky at 50 yards, making headshots like this. Boom, 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 boom. Doing that with a nice, well-built 1911 or something like that, built for target shooting, is a difficult enough task as it is. Like, this guy can shoot, just painting a picture. There's some good videos of him, old videos on YouTube. Look him up, Bob Housingay. His name's in the book, How Fast is Fast. And he's doing shit like a double bill drill with a revolver, bill drill, 7 yards, A-zone on a USPSA target. It's about 5x11. A bill drill from Bill Wilson. Draw, shoot 6 rounds at 7 yards into the A-zone. If you miss and you didn't complete the drill, par time is usually about 2 seconds. He did a bill drill with a revolver and reloaded and then shot again, so a double bill drill in under 4 seconds. With a fucking revolver. Like so this guy's good, right? Here's how Bob would start classes and end them. And he would tell you this. Always start and end all training with accuracy. There's a big build up to the point of what we're doing. Nothing else matters if you can't hit a thing. Let's talk a little bit, change gears into actually fighting with a gun. Has anybody ever been shot? I have not. I've been shot by a BB gun. I'm blind in my right eye. I spent about a week in intensive care as a kid because a kid shot me in the face. That was pretty stupid. Nobody? Anybody ever shoot somebody? Anybody ever shoot a deer? Or another animal? Have you ever shot an animal or dispatched an animal that it just instantly died? Like just dropped and was just gone. Went to see Jesus, dear Jesus or whatever. Have you ever shot a deer or an animal that didn't die so well? One time this kid as a young man, great story, murder. Him and my son, he's my nephew. You were 12, 13, Andrew was probably 10. We're walking out into the deer woods at his grandpa's house. Cold as the boys are all wrapped up like, you know, abominable snowmen. And this little, beautiful doe, all 61.5 pounds of her. What was she, maybe 80 pounds? Yeah. It was a yearling doe. It was legal. She walks out. We leave the house, and we're not 100 yards from the back door, intending to walk in the woods. And the boys had gone through hunter safety and shit, and I'm like, let's load up just in case we spook a deer. This doe walks out in front of us, and he looks back at me, and I'm like, you know, what you want to do? 12 gauge with a slug from like me to Bert. Boom! She's on the ground, and that was a good hit. But it was a good hit. When you hit her like where shoulder and neck meet, the deer was dead. She just didn't know it yet. And I mean, it was like my son's eyes are like, is this what this is all about? And so I'm like, you gotta dispatch the deer. So you freaking boom, shoot her again on the ground. And I'm not making light of the taking of an animal. I have total respect for the process. But as an introduction to the harvesting of another animal, this was pretty gruesome. She died hard. I mean, it was not, but think about what I'm saying. A 1 ounce lead slug, an animal that's smaller mass-wise than everybody here, and she was alive taking that to her spine. And then he shot her again. He walked up and basically, like, I was about to like explain, like, let's shoot her in the face, or so you went and shot her like in the heart. And she was, I mean, it was like, no, she looked up like, why? I was just alive. And I remember like, oh, we're gonna eat your backstrap in about 5 minutes. And we did. We were eating her like 22 minutes later. We had her in the house, her little tenderloin. It's like a bratwurst. Anyway. We think about guns for self-defense. Claude Werner, I talked about him yesterday, the tactical professor. Claude is in your handout for you to go read about his stuff. Analyzed thousands and thousands of gunfights. Thousands, not hundreds, not 50, thousands. Thank you, sir. And he looked for similarities that would aid in training. He was a Green Beret, then he went and ran Rogers Shooting School. Ever heard of Rogers Shooting School? No? Rogers Shooting School is the best of the best. Go there to learn how to shoot fast and accurate. Guy that's in your handout, quick sidebar, Gabe White was one of the only people to ever clear the shooting course. It's a SEAL shooting course where targets pop up, you have a timed amount of exposure to it, and you have to shoot it or it disappears. If you went there or I went there or you went there, it's the same course of fire, so you can kind of like measure your results at this. It's like a bunch of pneumatic shit makes these targets pop up. Gabe not only shot it clean, but he shot it from concealment, where guys are down there with like duty rigs and gloves, and he shot it with a pretty much bone stock Glock from concealment, just to like show it could be done. Back to Rogers. So he's running this prestigious shooting school. He's also not an idiot when it comes to parsing data. Deloitte, you know who they are? Anybody? Who are they, sir?
Consulting company?
Huge consulting company, billions of dollars. They hire this guy to parse data. So he knows what the doing. And he looked at, for them, he was analyzing like insurance statistics and just who cares kind of numbers. So he pours through all the shit, and he's looking at, did the person live or die? How far away were they from the person that was using the gun for protection? Did they hit them? How many times did they hit them? What was the effect when they hit them? And of course, all of this is contingent upon this data being present. Somebody had to gather this data. What was the caliber? What was the time of day? You know, just all kinds of factors. And he looked at this and tried to put it into some meaningful format to figure out how can we use all this information to actually train people. There's guys on the internet, I don't want to name names, but that look at shootings, try to pass on meaningful information, but a lot of it is just happy horse shit. And it's happy horse shit because you're like, look at this terrible thing. This thing is terrible. We see this terrible thing happening. Don't allow terrible things to happen. Yay, great. Like, how do you actually take real meaningful action on, you get what I'm saying? Like to say you need a gun because this terrible thing could happen, that's not actionable other than you go buy a gun. I want to know, like, what minutia can I drill so that if ever in that moment I can survive? Back to Claude. Mirroring what Bob spoke about, and Bob trained thousands of law enforcement officers across the country, many of whom ended up in violent encounters where Bob would document this. What Claude realized and found out was the first relevant hit matters. This becomes an arguing point in chat rooms and in comment sections. What the relevant? Relevant meaning that it changes the tempo of the fight. It changes somehow the aggressor's posture and allows you or whoever it was to maneuver and win. I quoted my friend Super Dave earlier. Remember what he said? Everything's important, everything matters, do the right thing at the right time every time. You could do the right thing at the wrong time, then it ain't the right thing, right? Dave also has an ism. You are either maneuvering or being maneuvered upon. Think about that. Dave's pretty good at these very simplistic isms that are very broad if you don't think a little deeper. You're either maneuvering or being maneuvered upon. Apply that to business. You can apply that to pretty much anything. You've only got so many customers, and the guy that's selling the same shit you have is going to take it too. Take those people, right? Back to the subject with Claude. The first relevant hit really, for the most part, changes the tempo of the fight. He then looked for outliers. Sure, there were people that were shot to shit, like that deer that fought on, but for the most part, most bad guys that were hit, the tempo changed. This wasn't what I was expecting. That hurts. I want to get away. Something to that effect. Is it 60%, 70%? It depends on how you look at this data, but it's a high enough percentage that what we know is getting the round into the target matters. All of this is contingent upon you making a good choice that thing, that person, by thing I mean wild animal or something of that nature, needs to be shot, right? You've made that decision. That chasm has been crossed. Now the gun's up in front of you. So how do we create training that helps us win once we've made that leap? Does that make sense? Accuracy trumps all of that. You hear people often misrepeat, but Wyatt Earp said, accuracy is final, right? You look at a problem long enough, and usually people will arrive, if educated and looking at it thoughtfully, they'll arrive at the same conclusion. This is how, at the same time the Wright brothers were in America designing their airplane. There happened to be people on the other side of the world coming to similar conclusions. At the same time, Marconi was trying to design the wireless. So was Alexander Graham Bell. Who was it?
Nikola Tesla?
Was it Nikola?
Wireless electricity?
Yeah, not the wireless electric thing. You read the fucking weird shit on the internet. I'm gonna be able to flip this switch and make power for my whole neighborhood with dog poop. You read that shit, don't you?
I've seen some videos.
Oh man. Perpetual motion is fake. Okay, all right. Get my point though, right? You look at the same problem long enough and people are going to arrive at the same conclusions or similar conclusions. We need to be able to hit what we're aiming at. So as we progress, today we're going to start to add things like movement. Maybe we'll add time. So what didn't come up this morning, who's ever thought, I want to be more accurate? Whoever said, I want to be more accurate, but I'm going to draw a hard line at like, I don't know, shooting something the size of a basketball 100 yards away. I don't need to be any better than that. Or shooting something the size of a dime 5 yards away. I don't need to be any better than that. I mean, ideally, we'd be able to like hit bullets out of the air, right? Like that'd be cool. All right, Mark, you shoot and I knock your bullet out of the air. We watch it in slow motion. Pew! Damn, Mick hit his bullet out of the air. Like that'd be cool, right? What's that? Curve it? I don't want to curve it. That's bullshit. I just want to hit bullets out of the air. So we got to define how far, target zone, size, right? It's pretty easy if I said, as fast as you can, shoot the berm. That berm is freaking 60 feet tall and 50 yards wide. As long as you've got the gun in front of you when you press the trigger, you're probably going to hit it. Now, shoot the target 10, the little 8 on the bottom. Same distance, same time. Right? Now all of a sudden you got to get a sight picture. Now all of this stuff of how I grip the gun, how I connect the gun, how I present it, it needs to be consistent. Danny, who's created this system, ever see Michael Jordan or anybody walk up to the line to shoot a free throw? That's not just wasting time. They're sinking into some mode of operation that they created. Right? Step out of the box again. You do some shit like that, right? They're setting themselves into that. That's cool. I can't walk down the street though and be like, there's the bad guy. Eyes, ears, right? So all that goes out the window. So what I need to do is have my gear on me, how I'm hoping to find it, meaning whatever the best case scenario is for you, how I'm hoping to find this shit on my person, it's how I want to have it, same way every time. John Bianchi holsters. You ever heard of Bianchi holsters? Safari Land owns them now. They were the biggest holster maker in the world. Every copper had a Bianchi holster on his hip. Secret Service, Bianchi holsters, like very famous, Southern California, made in America, great product. John said one gun, one holster all the time. What he meant by that is develop consistency in the gear, the gun that you're shooting. I'm going to shoot a different gun this afternoon. Why? I mean, if you want to spend your money to just like get exposure to the guns that you own, that's totally cool. I have definitely gone in your position to a class as a student and taken a gun. Like I shot the 365s for years and I'd go to classes and see how hard can we push these things. And a class is a nice environment where you don't have to do anything but what you're told, right? You just show up and you just shoot shit and see how it performs. So if that's the thing, fine. But if you're unable to get a consistent result with it, gun jumping isn't going to help. Buying skill with equipment is maybe 2 to 5% of shooting. I'm making that number up, but it's minimal. I told you about my friend Eric Camps. Stock Glock is winning, huge championships. I put an Instagram post up the other day. Spencer Keeper's at this event I at. Spencer Keeper owns Keeper holsters. Good dude, great shooter, very fast. He likes to do the high-speed appendix draw bullshit. We're at this like circle jerk corporate event, and there was 50 guns on the table and a plethora of ammo, and he was trying to freaking get on film looking like the mid-dick, you know what I'm saying? So he's got this staccato, $3,000, beautiful, you know, highly tuned race gun, and he wanted to have like a 15-yard bill drill, not really a bill drill, but like a race to 15 rounds at 15 yards with me. And none of us were shooting our own gun except him. He snuck his own gun in there, even though it said, "Know your own gun," because they didn't want people, there was all kinds of people there that were not gun people. So I picked up stock SIG P365 and matched him with that fancy gun. It was pretty demoralizing for him, that gear. My point is, was it easier for him to shoot that big gun? Yeah. I mean, you buy some skill there. Maybe he beat me by a half a second. That's a long time in a string of fire. We fire 2 to 3 rounds in that amount of time. Most of you can fire 5 rounds a second, easily. That's a round every 2. You don't believe me? If I put a timer on you, I will guarantee you will fire at least 4 to 5 rounds in a second. That's 0.25 to 0.20. So a half second's a long time. But in a mag dump at 15 yards, and I also will say all my rounds hit, he had some misses. This isn't a pat on my back. It is a little bit. But what it is that the gear, you're buying such fractions of time. It's not like my truck against a brand new Corvette. Completely different animal, right? Completely different animal. That race gun, so much easier to shoot. But what is still happening? Still have to grip the gun, still have to have a good, strong base behind it, still have to be capable of driving the sights back to the target, still have to press the trigger when the sights are there, etc. You tracking? So don't chase that animal either. Dude, I don't even like to say how many guns I own. I mean, I couldn't tell you. We'd have to go do an inventory check. There's a pretty much bone stock Glock on me, or one of those Berettas. Fancier shit doesn't solve any problems. Mechanics and the fundamental principles are what do. I like how Dave Spalding, you guys know who Dave Spalding is? Somebody else I list in the book. David, I think Dave was a gym teacher before he was a cop and a trainer. Dave is another pillar of the training community. Dave likes to call them the essentials instead of fundamentals. Just as like a mental point, like this thing is essential. I must do this thing to be successful. And I like that. What are those things that are essential to the goal that we have? How do I train for them? Based on things like real world data, like what Claude Werner went and looked at, right? And then let's train for that. Which, if you think about that, back to what I brought up this morning, if your goal is to survive in violence, why aren't you doing some of the other things, right? Who's been to my S12 event? Any of you? Any of you? So at the S12 event, I thought you were for a minute, but no, you're trying to. Not a sales pitch for the event, but it is a good event. We do combatives every day, and it's not to even teach you to fight. It's to teach you to stand on your feet, or stay on your feet, or how to get back to your feet if there's somebody aggressing on you. The fighting part, just like the shooting part, is a lifelong journey, but we try to expose you every day to some stuff. At one point, my friend Z Durham, literally for the course of 2.5, 3 hours, has physical combat with every single one of the 40 students, one after the other after the other. And we do that for 3 reasons. One, Z is skilled enough to allow nobody to get hurt in the equation, and he's a skilled enough partner that he'll stop anybody that maybe gets a little too amped up or psycho, because we men, we try to go hard, and if you don't practice martial arts, maybe you don't know where like the line of demarcation is. He can deal with that tempo. 2, it exposes to the student, holy shit, while this is a very strong, well-rounded fighter, he just went with 22 dudes. He's drenched in sweat, and he's been training before this iteration. He's been teaching all day. I'm gassed in 1 minute, and he's still going. What's that tell me about me and my capabilities? And then 3, and I've talked about this with Z. Z does it for himself to remind himself of what he's capable of, and he's not doing it for anybody else. And exposing ourselves to that kind of shit is really, I just went all afternoon with 40 dudes. I'm not going to not be scared of you, or I'm not going to be disrespectful of any potential somebody could have to hurt me. Remember Chris Kyle? You know, American Sniper, shot in the back of the head. You've got all the training, you've got all the skills. You can still be had. But when we start to look at all this stuff in a big, holistic picture, you should start to direct your thoughts back to the same thing. Becomes silly almost. You go sit in a room. I was with my coach, Dan Hart. I was with Paul Sharp. I was with Z Durham. I was with Don Deo, 5th Group, or another Green Beret guy. Don owns D-Day Response. I was with Ben Simonson, Boresight Solutions. Ben was a CCT. If you don't know what that is, where's my Air Force guy? What's a CCT? Jeez. Combat Controller. So a CCT is literally a Special Operations soldier that's super smart. They go do all the badass training, except they oftentimes jump by themselves out of the clouds at 40,000 feet with a mask on because they jump from so high. They pop up onto a mountain somewhere, set up all their radio shit, and then they direct missiles and bombs onto bad guys, or they're with the team fighting and then calling in all the close air support. They're basically air traffic controllers, artillery men, and super soldiers all in one. So Ben was there. So we're sitting around talking. And the talk is not about like what's the gun, what's the optic, blah, blah, blah. It's, dude, what kind of supplements are you taking to get better rest? What are you taking post-workout for recovery? What kind of stretching routine are you? I'm not joking. One of the guys that was there, Scott, who will be at the next S12, Scott was one of the original Blackwater operators that a bunch of stuff in movies has been made about. Scott is all about waking up, reading his Bible, and doing kettlebell exercises in the sunshine on the beach, and like opening his freaking heart and mind to the day. That's like what these guys are directed back to. Get what I'm saying? And then all this other stuff, like you need to learn these hard skills, but there's so much more to it. What kind of questions on the stuff from this morning? Nothing. All right, actionable steps, things that when we arrive back at the line in a few minutes that we can put action to.
Critiquing your grip, making sure that your wrists are locked up.
All right, so let's do this. Mindfulness. Let's think about this. I want to be mindful of what I'm doing. Here's a thing to take away. If I can't pay attention to what I'm doing, how can I correct it, right? I talk about awareness probably more than anything, not just awareness of this, but awareness of this. If I'm not aware of what's happening, it's data, just like data on the target. I can't make a prescription, even if it's self-prescribed, without seeing what's there. Let's put more salt in the soup. Did you taste it yet? Right? Let's cook the turkey 20 minutes longer. Did you put a thermometer in it yet? You know what I mean? All the same shit. Tap that board over a little. You never even put a level on it, dude. Put the level on it first. So we have to take a measurement or a baseline before we make a correction. So I like that. You said you used the word critique. I like that. So let's constantly just be analyzing and see where things are. Cool thing is you do it enough, and then you can kind of put the thing in the file cabinet and leave it alone. None of you ever in a million years, unless you get dementia or some shit, I hope you don't, will need to think about, I'm about to turn right. What do I do? Up or down? Do you? Yes, no? No. Get in somebody else's car, you might need to go, how do I turn your headlights on? Right? Any of you old enough to have the button on the floor for the brights? Yeah. Love that. Why don't we do that anymore? I love that. I used to stomp that thing. Some asshole, you pam, 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 flash them.
When you're driving a pickup truck that has the gear.
Yeah, sure.
You go, eh.
So different vehicles give you that, but you get in your own car, even if in any car, none of you need to worry about which way to go right. Up, down, right? Which one's the gas, right or left? None of you have to think about that. You've done that enough that it's in the filing cabinet. None of you Any of you raise a kid or grandkid? None of you, but just the couple? How many have ever seen a kid try to drink liquid out of a cup when they're little? Are you guys not with me? How many of you have ever been like this? Okay, I know I can do this. Hey, right. Or you watch a kid eat and you're like, what are you, retarded? Grandpa, I'm not even 2, you know? You retard. There's food everywhere. Grandma, go get my belt. Right? That's a joke. You're sick. You think that shit's funny.
I got beat up as a kid. It works, right?
Where is he? Let's go get him.
I mean, like, when I need it.
Oh, okay. Just like when you spilled something. Yeah. Maybe you had a hard time falling asleep. Just hit you a little bit.
A hairbrush on a bare ass.
A hairbrush on a bare ass. Old sexy time at Bert's house, huh?
My mother did.
Like I said, old sexy time over at Bert's house, huh? So my old man would make you reach your hand up from the back seat and he'd take the hairbrush and wrap your knuckles. To this day, I have picked up hairbrushes around my parents' house, snapped them in half and thrown them back in the drawer. Not a joke. Am I making that shit up? Who the broke my hairbrush? Come hit me now, old man. Come on, you cocksucker. There's a lot of jokes there, but there's some that aren't. You get my point. You develop the skill to the point that it's in the file cabinet and you can discard that. The Facebook group that I have for instructors, guy posed a question the other day based on a question I had, and he was arguing I don't use my sights. I'm arguing you do use them. You're just not thinking about using them because he's so good now. It's not like you just don't use your sights, otherwise we just figure out how to use the sights and we could grind them off the gun so they stop tearing our holsters up. You're just not having to consciously look at it, like you're not consciously working that turn signal. I tell you all of this not to just talk. Don't get down on yourself. It takes just a little bit to develop a good habit. Speaking of habits, I'm drawing from the outside the waistband. If I switch to an appendix, for about 15 minutes I will reach to where there's nothing. And then about after 20 minutes, 15 minutes, I will be right back to this. It does not take that long to refresh your brain, which is why as you leave your house, whatever gear you have on, go to the mirror and get a grip. Go to the mirror, get a grip, and do it 10, 15 times so that you've got that last rep burned in. On that, the last rep burned in. Every time I touch my gun, I'm learning something, right or wrong. Right or wrong. Anybody got bad handwriting?
Yeah, bad.
That's your fault. You ingrained it. Grammar teacher tried to make you do the stupid trace things, right? I hated that shit. My mom was a teacher. Tear that shit up too. I was destructive. Snap pencils. I can't do it anymore. You did some pencil breaking too?
No, I was laughing. That's why you got hit.
Oh, I got hit a lot. You're ingraining something, and some of you have shot enough that you ingrain some shit. And so now you just have to be that conscious mindfulness to uningrain it and put in a new program. My software guys know you got to put a new program in, you got to get rid of the old one, right? Tracking? What are you smiling at?
Me?
Thinking about some Pornhub code or some shit? Sicko?
No, I was thinking that. I guarantee everybody here is going to think about which way to turn their turn signal on.
But I think all these analogies, right? It's don't get down on yourself. Just hyper focus. In the greater ability that you have to do that, the faster it'll happen. And what you're going to find out, we are so taxed by choice for our attention. We're so taxed by choice for our attention. Not just because of phone and all that. Nobody in the history of mankind had the amount of stimuli that we do. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, but things like a sunset cause our body to go into a state of relaxation. We don't just go to the beach because there's tits and ass there. When we are on a beach and you feel relaxed sitting there watching the sunset, literally that does something to a deep part of your brain. There's a science, it's not Mickey. Staring off at a flat plane staring at a mountain range in the distance. It opens your gaze and causes you to relax. Thomas Carlyle said, silence is the element in which great things fashion themselves together. He was a 80s, 1900s poet. We are so taxed for attention. I caught myself the other night. I had a book in my lap, some shit going on my phone, Netflix was going, drinking a beer, which is distracting my attention, and I'm like, what the am I doing? What the Shut the Netflix off, closed the stupid book, and I got back to that porn on that phone. You know what I mean? No, I went and read the book. But you know what I'm saying? We are so taxed. Think about driving in the history of mankind. You had to look for predators, go find some food, light a fire. Even later, even just 100 years ago, people that lived out here that hewed these plains out of the frontier, tilled up some sod, grew some shit, raised a family. Just driving. Why is driving exhausting? I'm just sitting there. You are taking your brain and making it process billions of bits of information. Road sign, other car, speedometer, side mirror, wife telling me to slow down, blah, 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 blah. The same thing's happening out here. The difference is you are choosing to get in your car. You're choosing to have Netflix, phone, book open. Out here, man, when I told you this is the mat, that I love when I'm at jiu-jitsu. I think Kanan will probably agree. You can't really think about anything else. If you do, you're getting choked. And so for a couple hours, man, and your whole world goes from here to just right here. I'm hot and sweaty. This dude's breath stinks. God dang it. I think this guy smells like pickles. That's literally what I think about. Why don't these take more baths, and they must be washing their gi in chicken piss or some shit. You know what I'm talking about? And you're just right there. You are not thinking about, man, the NASDAQ I hope the interest rates, I mean, I need them to change some because this inflation thing sucks. You're not thinking about any of that. You're like literally right here. And that's what this is. Stop thinking about even what's happening on the paper. In the moment, your focus has to be what's going on right here, which is why arguments like one eye open for awareness or scan for bad guys, a lot of that becomes bullshit in the sense of, right now I'm trying to shoot you. Right now, to do that, I need to ensure that my muzzle's aligned on you and press the trigger straight to the rear. After that, albeit a half a second, now I can open my awareness up. But we're not taking those pauses to capture glimpses of what we're seeing. Does that make sense? I've talked too long. We're gonna put new paper up. Let's put up new 1 to 8s or 1 to 10s on all of them. Would you guys?
Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com. Hey man, what are you doing in the podcast room, Steve?
I'm writing a national anthem. It's going to be at folk festivals for Gunfighter Gunawell.
Oh.
Let me tell you about Gunfighter Gunawell. Made in the USA. Gunfighter Gunawell, 100% synthetic. It's gonna last you, baby. Yeah. Gunfighter gun oil is the best I've ever seen. It's gonna make you get everything that you've ever seen. Oh, baby, I love me some gunfighter gun oil. Yeah. Oh, gunfighter gun oil. Gunfighter.
Gonna get my lighter out. I don't have it.
It wasn't even Bob Dylan. It was like a love story.